Ferrari did not lose pole by being slow. They lost it after Verstappen crashed, yellow flags appeared, and Russell crossed the line anyway. Leclerc was in the fight. Hamilton was right there. Ferrari's new engine update had suddenly turned Austria from a Mercedes weekend into a red warning light for the entire paddock. Then Russell took pole, and Ferrari wanted answers, because the truth was not in Russell's celebration. It was hidden inside the Mercedes data, the throttle trace, the brake pressure, the exact speed through the yellow flag zone, and the tiny lift that could either save his pole or destroy it. But here is the part Mercedes should fear most. Even if Russell's lap survives, Ferrari has already proved something much bigger. The gap is now so small that one yellow flag decision can change everything. And if Leclerc and Hamilton are close enough to make the FIA review matter, then Mercedes are not just defending pole in Austria. They are defending their entire season from a Ferrari comeback that may have already begun. Subscribe to the channel. Austria was supposed to be the weekend where Mercedes reminded Ferrari of a gap. That was the story everyone expected. The Red Bull Ring is not a circuit that hides weakness. It is short, fast, and direct. If your car is missing power, the straights expose it. If your tires are sliding, the lap time exposes it. If your driver cannot trust the brakes, the circuit exposes it before the lap is even over. And for Ferrari, that was the danger. The SF26 had already shown real strength in the corners. That was never the problem. The car could carry speed beautifully when the track demanded balance, grip, and confidence. It could make time in the places where the driver leaned on the aerodynamic platform. But Austria asks a different question. What happens when the car has to launch hard out of corners, climb the hill, and fight down the straights against Mercedes' power? On Friday, the answer looked painful. Ferrari did not look ready to fight for pole. Leclerc was asking for more grip. Hamilton was dealing with a locking sensation that made the car harder to trust. The timing screens told the same story as the driver's messages. Mercedes looked clean. Ferrari looked uncomfortable. And the gap was more than half a second in qualifying conditions. At Austria, that is not a small problem. It is a loud one. There are not enough corners to hide that kind of deficit. There is not enough lap time to recover it slowly. When a team is half a second away at the Red Bull Ring, the entire garage feels it. That is why Ferrari's Friday mattered so much. It made Saturday feel almost impossible. But this is where the weekend began to turn. Because Ferrari had not arrived in Austria with the same car they had been carrying earlier in the season. They had brought the ADUO engine update, the development step aimed directly at the weakness that had followed them for months. Power. That word sounds simple, but in Formula One it decides everything. Power changes how early a driver can attack on corner exit. Power changes how much a rival can defend on the straight. Power changes whether a great chassis can become a race-winning car or whether it stays trapped behind something faster in a straight line. Ferrari knew that. Mercedes knew it too. And that is why Ferrari were so careful with the way they spoke about the update. They did not call it a revolution. They did not promise a massive breakthrough. They described it as a controlled step, a smaller improvement, something that would not change the competitive order by itself. But in Formula One, cautious words can hide aggressive engineering. The new Ferrari power unit direction was built around a harsher operating world. More heat, more pressure, more efficiency. Ferrari were trying to make the engine work harder, burn better, and deliver more when Leclerc and Hamilton opened the throttle. That is not a comfortable path. Think of it like asking a machine to run hotter without braking, while still performing at maximum effort, lap after lap. If the materials survive, the reward can be serious. If they do not, the risk can appear quickly. Ferrari had changed important areas around the engine head. They had stronger materials to cope with the punishment. They also had a new shell fuel mixture designed to work with that hotter concept. The goal was clear. Give the SF26 enough punch to make its cornering strength matter everywhere. Not just on Ferrari-friendly circuits. Not just on tracks where grip is everything. At Austria too. But on Friday, the update had not yet given Ferrari the proof it needed. So the team went searching. Inside the garage, the night was not about emotion. It was about traces, temperatures, comparisons, and tiny decisions that could change the whole weekend. Engineers studied where Leclerc was losing grip. They looked at Hamilton's locking issue. They checked how the tires were behaving, how quickly the drivers could apply throttle, and whether the new engine characteristics were helping or hurting the balance. Because a Formula One car is not one part. It is a chain. If the engine delivery changes, the rear tires feel it. If the rear tires struggle, the driver loses confidence. If the driver loses confidence, he brakes earlier, turns softer, and opens the throttle later. Then the lap time disappears. So Ferrari had to answer one brutal question before qualifying. Was the performance missing or was it trapped? Those are two very different problems. If performance is missing, you need new parts. If performance is trapped, you need to unlock what is already there. By Saturday morning, Ferrari started to find the key. Hamilton was suddenly much closer to Russell in final practice. The huge Friday gap had collapsed into something the team could work with. The car was not perfect. Leclerc still had areas to improve, but the mood had changed. Ferrari were no longer just surviving. They were approaching, and that is when Mercedes should have started to worry. Because the most dangerous Ferrari is not the one that arrives fastest on Friday. Is the one that looks lost, then suddenly finds a window before qualifying. That means the performance was always there. It just needed the right conditions, the right balance, the right tire temperature, the right driver commitment. Starting at the front in Austria changes everything. Clean air matters. Tire temperatures matter. Strategy freedom matters. A driver leading the race can control the pace, protect the tires, and force everyone else to react. Starting behind a Mercedes is different. You deal with dirty air. You may have to push harder than planned. You risk overheating the tires. You lose the chance to dictate the race from the opening lap. So the Russell decision did not only decide a grid position, it changed Ferrari's entire Sunday. And for Mercedes, the pressure was real. Russell's defense was that he had seen the yellow flag, braked, lifted, and lost time compared with where he had been. Mercedes argued that it was a single yellow, not a double yellow, and that Russell had reduced speed clearly enough for the lap to stand. That distinction mattered. A double yellow is severe. It effectively tells the driver the lap is gone. Slow significantly. Stop chasing the personal best. Accept that the danger has ended the attempt. A single yellow is different. It still requires caution, but it does not automatically kill the lap if the driver shows a clear reduction in speed. And those words became the entire argument. Clear reduction. How clear is clear enough? Is a brief lift enough? Is losing a tenth enough? Is it enough if the driver still sets pole? Is it enough if his own teammate backed out moments earlier? That is why Ferrari were furious. Because the letter of the rule may protect Russell, but the image of the moment still looked painful. One Mercedes abandoned the lap. The other Mercedes completed it and took pole away from Ferrari. That kind of image does not disappear just because the stewards make a decision. The FIA reviewed the available data and decided there was no need for further investigation. Russell's pole stood. Mercedes kept the advantage. Ferrari did not get the front row back. But the controversy did not end the deeper story. Because even though Russell survived, Mercedes had already been exposed in another way. Ferrari were close enough for this to matter. That is the real turning point. If Ferrari had been slow, the yellow flag debate would have felt smaller. If Mercedes had dominated qualifying, Russell's pole would have looked inevitable. But Ferrari had been in the fight. The red cars had reached the front. The new engine update had brought them into range. And once a team is in range, everything changes. Every yellow flag matters. Every steward decision matters. Every lift of the throttle matters. Every tenth becomes political. That is why Austria was huge for Leclerc and Hamilton. Not because the result was overturned, but because Ferrari had finally reached the point where the result could have been challenged with meaning. Leclerc now knew he had the pace to fight for pole at a track where Ferrari expected to suffer. Hamilton now knew the car could respond to him in qualifying, even against Mercedes' power. Vasseur now knew Ferrari could pressure the FIA and Mercedes from a position of strength, not desperation. And Mercedes now knew something uncomfortable. Ferrari were no longer far enough behind to ignore. That is what makes the rest of the season dangerous. The ADUO update was described as modest, but the stopwatch told a different story. If this step could help Ferrari threaten Mercedes in Austria, then the next update could carry even bigger consequences. The SF26 still had its cornering strength. Now, if the power deficit was shrinking, the whole competitive order could start to bend. Ferrari did not walk away with pole, but they walked away with proof. Proof that the car had improved. Proof that both drivers could attack. Proof that Mercedes could be put under pressure. And proof that when Ferrari believes a decision costs them, they will not stay quiet. That is a dangerous combination. Speed and anger. A fast Ferrari is one problem. An angry, fast Ferrari is something else entirely. Because now Leclerc and Hamilton were not simply chasing Russell. They were chasing the feeling that something had been taken from them. That can become risky if it turns into impatience. But it can also become fuel. It can sharpen the start. It can sharpen the strategy. It can make every lap behind the Mercedes feel personal. Russell kept pole on paper, but Ferrari had changed the emotional meaning of the race. The Grand Prix was no longer only about who had the fastest car. It was about whether Mercedes could survive the pressure of a Ferrari team that believed it had been denied. And that pressure would not end in Austria. It would follow the championship, because once the gap shrinks, the sport becomes more sensitive. The same decisions that felt minor when one team was dominant become explosive when two teams are separated by tenths. A single yellow flag, a single lift, a single ruling from the FIA. Suddenly, those moments can decide everything. That is where Ferrari wanted Mercedes to feel uncomfortable. They wanted them to know the fight had changed. No more easy assumptions. No more comfortable power advantage. No more Ferrari quietly accepting a painful decision and moving on. Austria showed that Leclerc and Hamilton had a car capable of putting Mercedes under pressure, and Vasseur had a team willing to challenge the moments that mattered. That is the real news. The official result may still show Russell on pole, but the story underneath belongs to Ferrari's arrival, because the dispute only mattered because Ferrari had become fast enough to make it matter. And for Mercedes, that is the warning they cannot ignore. Russell survived the review, but Mercedes did not escape the message. Ferrari were there. Leclerc was there. Hamilton was there. And the next time a pole, a flag, or a steward decision comes down to a few tenths, Mercedes will know the red cars are close enough to turn one controversial moment into a championship fight.